You know, some movies don't just disappear because they were bad, sometimes they vanish because they were ahead of their time. And that's exactly what happened to PT Raiders, the 1955 film most audiences barely recognize today, even though it came from one of Britain's most respected studios and starred actors who would later become legends. But here's the twist: most people don't know PT Raiders isn't even the movie's real name. Originally released in Britain as The Ship That Died of Shame, this film quietly told one of the darkest post-World War II stories ever put on screen, a story about heroes who couldn't survive peace, a warship that almost feels alive, and a moral descent that shocked audiences expecting a simple naval adventure. Let's set sail. Fact 1: the movie wasn't originally called PT Raiders. The first hidden fact is also the most surprising one. PT Raiders was never meant to exist under that title at all. In the United Kingdom, the movie premiered as The Ship That Died of Shame, a far more poetic and symbolic name. When distributors prepared it for American audiences, they feared US viewers wouldn't respond to such a somber title, so they renamed it PT Raiders and marketed it like a wartime action film. Ironically, this change confused audiences because the movie isn't really about combat missions, it's about moral decay after the war. The retitled American version was also shortened significantly, cutting nearly 15 minutes of character development, which altered the tone and pacing dramatically. Fact 2: it came from legendary Ealing Studios. The film was produced by Ealing Studios, famous for light-hearted British comedies like Kind Hearts and Coronets. That's why audiences were shocked when this movie turned out dark, psychological, and deeply pessimistic. During the mid-1950s, Ealing was experimenting with more serious storytelling, reflecting a Britain still recovering from World War II's economic hardship. PT Raiders became one of the studio's boldest departures from comedy into noir-style drama, showing ex-soldiers struggling to find purpose in peacetime society. Fact 3: the story came from a famous naval author. The film is based on a story by Nicholas Monsarrat, the same author who wrote The Cruel Sea, one of the most respected naval novels ever written. Monsarrat had served in the Royal Navy during World War II, so his stories weren't romantic fantasies, they were grounded in real emotional experiences of sailors returning home after war. His writing explored guilt, loyalty, and psychological displacement, themes that became the emotional backbone of PT Raiders. Fact 4: the boat is practically a character. One of the film's strangest and most fascinating elements is that the ship itself feels alive. Throughout the story, the vessel seems to resist immoral actions, engines fail at suspicious moments, equipment breaks, and storms appear at symbolic times. Critics have long debated whether this is supernatural or purely psychological. The filmmakers intentionally left it ambiguous, suggesting the ship represents the crew's lost honor. This unusual storytelling device made the movie feel almost like a ghost story disguised as a crime drama. Fact 5: the plot reflects real post-war struggles. After World War II, thousands of servicemen returned to a struggling economy with limited opportunities. The film directly mirrors this reality. The three veterans buy their former naval boat and begin smuggling small black market goods before greed pushes them toward darker crimes. This wasn't fiction pulled from nowhere. Black market activity actually surged across post-war Europe due to shortages and rationing. The movie captured a social issue rarely shown honestly in 1950s cinema. Fact 6: Richard Attenborough played against type. Before becoming the beloved director of Gandhi decades later, Richard Attenborough shocked audiences here by playing George Hoskins, a manipulative, morally corrupt character. At the time, he was known for sympathetic roles, so seeing him portray greed and cruelty surprised viewers. Critics praised his performance because he made the character disturbingly believable rather than cartoonishly evil. Fact 7: real naval boats were used. Instead of relying entirely on studio props, the production used 3 real ex-Navy motor torpedo boats to portray the ship, known as 1087. These vessels had genuine wartime history, which added realism to the film's action scenes. Amazingly, one of those boats later became involved in actual smuggling operations and eventually sank in the Mediterranean, a real-life echo of the movie's story. Fact 8: filming happened in authentic naval locations. Many harbor scenes weren't built on sets. They were filmed in real British coastal locations, including Weymouth Harbor, Poole Quay, and Portsmouth Harbor. You can even spot recognizable landmarks like Portchester Castle in background shots. This authenticity gives the movie a documentary-like atmosphere that modern viewers often mistake for realism far ahead of its era. Fact 9. The film quietly blends crime and horror. Although marketed as an adventure film, P.T. Raiders contains horror elements. One smuggling mission involves transporting a criminal revealed to be a child murderer, a shocking subject for a 1950s movie. This moment marks the moral breaking point for the crew and transforms the film from crime drama into psychological tragedy. Few mainstream films of that decade dared to explore such disturbing themes. Fact 10. The ship symbolizes lost honor. Director Basil Dearden treated the vessel as a metaphor for wartime ideals corrupted by greed. During the war, the boat represented bravery and teamwork. In peacetime, it becomes a tool for crime. The narrative suggests that machines and even nations carry memories of how they were used. This symbolic storytelling was unusually philosophical for a mid-1950s genre film. Fact 11. The movie was darker than audiences expected. Audiences expecting heroic naval action instead found a bleak moral drama. The film portrays former heroes becoming criminals not because they're evil, but because they feel useless in peace. That emotional realism confused viewers at the time, but later earned the movie cult appreciation among film historians. Fact 12. Virginia McKenna's role changes the entire story. Virginia McKenna plays the skipper's wife, whose tragic fate early in the narrative destabilizes the protagonist emotionally. Her absence pushes him closer to moral compromise, showing how personal grief can reshape ethical decisions. Though her screen time is limited, the character's impact drives the film's emotional trajectory. Fact 13. The American edit changed the tone. When released in the United States, distributors trimmed scenes emphasizing psychological conflict and moral debate. The shorter cut leaned more toward action pacing, which unintentionally weakened the story's thematic depth. Modern restorations have returned closer to the original British vision. Fact 14. The film predicted neo-noir themes. Long before neo-noir became popular, P.T. Raiders explored ideas later common in 1970s cinema: flawed heroes, moral ambiguity, and consequences of violence after war. Many critics now view it as an early bridge between classic wartime films and darker modern crime dramas. Fact 15. The cinematography enhances the mood. Shot in black and white, the film uses heavy shadows and foggy harbor imagery to emphasize uncertainty and guilt. Cinematographer Gordon Dines framed the boat at night in ways that almost make it look haunted, reinforcing the theme that the ship disapproves of its new purpose. Fact 16. The music score adds emotional weight. Composer William Alwyn avoided heroic naval music. Instead, he used restrained orchestration that feels melancholic and reflective, underlining the tragedy rather than excitement. This musical choice subtly tells viewers they're watching a downfall, not an adventure. Fact 17. Early appearance by future TV star. Actor David Langton appears briefly in an uncredited role. He would later gain fame on British television decades later, making this film an interesting early entry in his career. Fact 18. Critics later reassessed the film. At release, reactions were mixed because audiences didn't know how to categorize it. Over time, critics began praising its mature themes and psychological storytelling. Today, many consider it one of the more underrated Ealing productions. Fact 19. The ending is meant to feel inevitable. The film's tragic conclusion isn't sudden, it's carefully foreshadowed. Mechanical failures, storms, and tension all build toward the ship's destruction, symbolizing the inevitable collapse of moral compromise. The narration describing the ship dying in anger and shame reinforces the story's allegorical nature. Fact 20. Why the movie became forgotten. Ironically, the title change, shortened runtime, and genre confusion all contributed to the film fading from public memory. It wasn't quite a war movie, not fully noir, and too philosophical for mainstream audiences of its era. But today, that uniqueness is exactly why film lovers rediscover it, a haunting story about what happens when war ends, but its psychological effects never do. So next time you hear the name P.T. Raiders, remember you're not just watching an old naval movie. You're watching a story about identity, guilt, and the struggle to live with peace after surviving war. It's a film where the heroes aren't defeated by enemies, but by themselves. And maybe that's why the ship had to die of shame. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden facts, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which forgotten classic you want explored next. Until next time, keep watching the classics.